Hi, I'm Shantae Jackson with the Sandal Blue Foundation, and I'm thrilled you're here for this resource conversation. These conversations are designed to help motor vehicle incident survivors and their caregivers have practical tools, tips, and guidance. You guys are in for a treat. Today, we're here with Sarah from Medical Trauma Support, talking all about the nervous system. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here, Shante.
I love it. So, to get started, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you gained the knowledge that you have that you'll be sharing with us.
So, like Shante said, my name's Sarah. I founded Medical Trauma Support, and within Medical Trauma Support, that's peer support and education, really a lot of nervous system education. But I'm also a therapist, so I'm a social worker and therapist outside of Medical Trauma Support. Um, The thing that brought me to this work was really my own lived experience and my own journey through my healing and supporting my family and some of the medical struggles that we had. And so that's like my very short version of what brought me here.
A lot of people don't really understand what the nervous system is. There's a lot of maybe buzz talking about the nervous system, but I feel like a lot of people don't understand that it can be understood simply, as
Yes.
well as in a way that doesn't feel like it's a buzzword as much as something that's actually happening to them. Is there a way that you could explain, in a more simple way what the nervous system is, how it works, anything like that?
Well, ultimately, I think what is important for people to know is that our nervous system is looking for danger and safety, right? That is, I think, something that is important for a human with a nervous system to understand is that our nervous system is looking for danger, right? It's trying to keep us safe. If our nervous system senses that there is danger, there are going to be things that our nervous system will do. It's of course more complicated than that. There are chemicals and all of these different things that are involved in that. But, people I think are pretty familiar with fight and flight. So they've heard that before. There's also freeze, there's shutdown, collapse, flop, and there's also fawning. So these are some different things that our nervous system will automatically do when we feel like we are unsafe. And so I think that that's probably like a very simple way to explain why the nervous system matters is because when our nervous system senses danger, it's going to automatically do things. And those things are often, they cause things like a racing heart or maybe like muscle tension, bracing. Sometimes they cause us to dissociate. Sometimes the nervous system will say, you know what? In this situation, you're not able to fight, you're not able to run away. So, what we're going to do is we're going to collapse and prepare ourselves for death. And so that can feel like, playing possum,
Mm.
right? So we collapse, we may go silent. Oftentimes I think about this in medical settings as somebody who goes into collapse may leave the appointment and be like, why couldn't I say anything? Why didn't I say anything to the doctor? Well, when you have this understanding of what your nervous system is doing to protect you, then you oftentimes can have a little bit more self-compassion.
Mm.
Like, wow, my nervous system was doing that because I felt unsafe. Now, I think it's really important to also say that we can help the nervous system also notice signs of safety. So, while our nervous system is ultimately trying to keep us safe and out of danger and alive, we are also able to do things that can help us recognize safety. Yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about some of the mechanisms that are happening with
Please.
our nervous system. So, one word, and so a lot of what I'm talking about, I'm using some of the language of the polyvagal theory, which is a theory that by Stephen Porges. And one of the words that we use when we're describing this is neuroception. And neuroception is what is constantly happening. It's happening with me and you right now, Shantae, is our nervous systems are scanning to see if we're safe or if we're in danger, right? And so what the nervous system or what is happening with neuroception is um, it's looking at interoception, right? It's looking at what is going on inside of our bodies, right? The nervous system is paying attention to, is my belly really tight? Are my muscles really tight? Is my heart beating quickly? It's looking at what's happening inside. Am I hungry?
Right?
Right? And it's also looking at the people that we're with. And I want to talk a lot more about that because that is a tool that we can use to feel better, our people. So we'll come back to that. But it is also looking at the environment that we're in. So right now, I'm in my office. I'm in an environment that I am familiar with. I feel safe here. If I was walking into a medical office before an appointment, I would be in a different environment that could very likely be very triggering for my nervous system.
Mm.
So just understanding that your nervous system is checking out your environment. And there's also a really cool practice for that. Should we pause and do one practice and then I'll do another one later?
Yes, before you do that practice, let's
Yeah.
kind of summarize some of what you just said. So, what
Okay.
I'm hearing is the nervous system is scanning
Mhm.
internally and externally without you even realizing it,
Exactly.
right? There's things that are happening, you don't know they're happening, but it's actively doing these things on its own because our bodies are created that way in order to keep us safe. And when
Exactly.
you're talking about safety, that's one thing that I do just want to touch on for a minute. When you talk about, am I feeling safe? I've noticed sometimes that I feel those symptoms you talked about. My stomach's clenched, or I feel like running away. In situations I wouldn't label necessarily as unsafe if I was describing it,
Yeah.
but yet my nervous system is responding that way. So when you talk about feeling safe, what does that mean exactly?
So I'm really glad you said that because safety to our nervous system is a felt sense of safety,
Mm,
right? And so there could be two people in the same environment, and one feels safe and one feels really unsafe. And there could be a lot of different reasons for it, right? I mean, so many different reasons, but like one could be maybe somebody smelled something that reminded them, there's a smell in the room
mm,
that reminded them of a trauma they'd experienced in their life.
okay.
So, medical trauma is very sensory. And so, if there is ever a soap, this is an example for me, if there is ever a soap I use that is the same soap from the hospital, it immediately takes me back to that. So, while I may be in a safe room, my nervous system is being brought back
Mm,
to an event that that wasn't safe.
yeah.
And so that's what I'm talking about with a felt sense of safety. And I before we go forward, I really want people to know that we're talking about these changes that can happen with trauma, and I just think it's really important for people to know that we can also shift them.
Mm,
Right?
yes.
I know we're going to talk more about this in this conversation, but I think sometimes people can feel really discouraged when they hear about all the things that trauma does.
Yes.
So we really, I just want to say right now, early on, that there are ways to change it. There are ways to support yourself. And Shantae and I both know in our own bodies
Yep.
that that is true. And that's why we're doing this work ultimately. I don't want to speak for you, but
100%.
yeah,
Yes. And
yeah,
and I do want to do a practice, but before I want to give another example. So you gave an example of the soap, that's something that is triggering. Again, trigger is one of those buzzwords too, but we're talking about this in a real sense, right? That
right.
soap is actually triggering your nervous system to say, I wasn't safe once
Yeah.
when I smelt this or when I was around this. Am I still safe now? And that's what that scan is doing. That's why you're triggered.
Yeah.
And an example that I have from our experience is we had Subway, like the sandwich shop. We
Right.
had Subway sandwiches about a half an hour before our wreck happened. And then in the hospital, it was the Olympics, and there were Subway commercials all the time during that my husband remembers. I don't. But
Yeah.
for him, he remembers watching the Olympics, laying in the hospital bed, not being able to move, all of these Subway commercials. And still to this day, the thought of eating Subway, the colors of their logo, seeing an ad for them physically makes him ill.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about. That's what I'm hearing you say is his nervous system is scanning and saying, "Hey, you ate this sandwich and then you almost died.
Right.
So
Right.
if you're seeing this sandwich again, are you going to die? Is it going to be
Exactly.
unsafe again?" And so
Yes.
that's what we're talking about. It's not necessarily because is he unsafe when he sees a Subway ad? No, he's
Right.
totally safe, right? Like he's physically not in danger, but his nervous system is scanning to make sure of that. And that's why these symptoms come up. Okay,
Right.
please tell us about a practice that we can do as we're starting to notice these things and shift into being able to be more in control of this.
Yes. And I hadn't even planned to bring this one in, but when we were talking about, a felt sense of safety and being in a safe place, but starting to feel unsafe, I thought we have to bring this practice in. And this one is called orienting. So essentially, what I'm doing is I'm orienting my vision, my nervous system to the space that I'm actually in that moment. And so what I'm going to do, and sometimes people like to just like listen and watch first and then join in. So I'm going to offer that. I'm going to show what I'm doing and I'm also going to talk about what I'm doing. So I'm going to look up toward the horizon. I'm not looking straight ahead and I'm not looking up to the ceiling, but kind of to the horizon. And I'm going to have the intention that I'm taking in a little bit more of my peripheral vision. So I'm kind of opening up my vision a little more than usual. And I'm just going to slowly look over my right side, paying attention to my body and my neck mobility. We want this to be comfortable. I'm coming back around to the center and I'm just slowly and gently doing this. And now I'm going to look over the left side. I'm noticing things as I look. I'm not getting, caught up in anything, but I notice the plants and the yellow flowers and what I have on my walls. And you can do that again. You can do both sides again. But what is happening is I'm bringing myself and I'm really taking the time to slow down and show my nervous system where I am right now. So even if maybe I had washed my hands somewhere with that soap and I could still smell it on my hands and I'm in my office, I'm able to remind myself of that. But what that takes is it takes me slowing down and doing that.
Yes.
Yeah. And
I
that's
have,
not always easy. It's
it's
not always
not.
easy. Yeah.
And as you're talking about this practice, it reminds me a lot of, mindfulness or being present. Is there any similarities or differences when we're resetting our nervous system along with the practices that people come to with mindfulness or being present? Talk to me a little bit about that.
There are a lot of similarities because ultimately what I think is one of the keys to recovering, healing, whatever word you want to use from trauma is that we do have to slow down and be with ourselves and be with what's coming up for us. I'm sure there are people listening, the thought of that is terrifying. And I
Yeah.
know that in my own body. So I want to say that this is slow, gentle work. We don't want to re-traumatize ourselves. But it really does require that slowing down. For so many of us, we are going to need support to do that. So for me, I had a very wonderful therapist for years, a very skilled therapist. We did somatic experiencing was a lot of what we used. But I will also tell you that it was years of work. So that's, yes, I think they're the same because I think it's really important for us to slow down and be able to do that and be able to be present with ourselves.
Yeah. You talk about it being years of work, and I think when you're starting out in just the discovery of your nervous system and how it affects you in regards to experiencing a motor vehicle incident, um, we want to make sure that people are understanding that it's not just them, right? Normalizing this, as well as, a lot of times people feel like, why can't I just calm down? It's been 6 months, it's been 3 years. Why can I not just calm down? Why does that happen? Why is it that they can't just feel a little better after time has passed?
I mean, like in life, it's not that easy, but a lot of it does have to do with the nervous system, obviously. So
Yeah,
I don't know how deeply to get into the conversation about the brain, but basically what does happen when we've experienced trauma is our autonomic nervous system and our amygdala, kind of our um, lower quick brain, right? That does things quickly, is more sensitive. It's more sensitive to danger. When we do go into, when we sense that there is danger, our body is preparing us to fight, like fight the bear, right? Run
right,
away from the bear. If those things can't happen, we will, go into collapse or freeze. Um, we don't need our prefrontal cortex to start to think through the pros and the cons because that
right,
wouldn't keep us alive, right? In this situation of like we're out in the mountains and there's a bear. So we actually lose some access to that when we are dysregulated, when we feel like we're in danger. We're going to lose some of the access to like those thinking skills. But the nervous system is not, it doesn't speak in words. It doesn't speak in, oh, I just want to feel better, right? It is really like there's a language of like safety. It's really like the language of safety and danger. And so again, like I said, kind of at the beginning of this part is that our nervous system becomes a little bit more hyper vigilant, not just a little bit, but our nervous system will become more hyper vigilant after we've experienced trauma. And so we're working with that. We're working with the autonomic nervous system, which is a lot of people that are familiar with the phrase autonomic nervous system, they think of it as, oh, that's that involuntary part of our nervous system that controls our heart rate, our breathing, like our salivary glands. Like there's so much that it impacts. And so it's so much deeper and more body based than just the words of why can't I just calm down?
right.
All right. So essentially, you know, we aren't built to just calm down just because we want to, right? That's not, like I said, there are parts of the brain that are kind of taking over, right? So some of like the subcortical parts of our brain, like the amygdala. But then we also lose a lot of the ability to like use language and it's really like about safety. How can we show ourselves that we're safe?
Right. And I think that's something that I encounter a lot for myself, and then people that I love, and then other people that have been, in a wreck of some sort. They weren't expecting it that day. They're thrown into this trauma that affects them physically and emotionally, financially, all of the things. Are there things that we can do, daily practices, or when this part of our brain is going, nope, I'm not working right now. Like, how can we get back into that feeling of hope, right? You talked about that at the beginning. There
Yeah.
is hope, and there is a way to, many ways, to be able to access um, ability to calm down and to recognize what is going on and then what to do with it. Whether it's a daily practice or something to do in that moment, what can we do?
Well, there are quite a few things that we can do. And again, this is something that happens over time. And I think it's also really important for people to understand that you have to actually do these things. You can't just know the information and not do them. So, some of the things that we're trying to do is, again, we're trying to help rebuild a sense of safety, of noticing safety. We really want to have support, right? So having a support person, having a support group, having a supportive community, because co-regulation is a really powerful way for us to feel better and calm down, right? So, um, we talked about how you can't really talk yourself into calming down, but what you can do is you can co-regulate with a supportive person who is able to kind of hold space. They're able to be with you without getting themselves dysregulated. So, and then that's a really important part to safety. So I started out by talking about safety. I talked about support. Um, I think learning about your nervous system, and I know we've done like this much of the education because we don't want to overwhelm people with it, but learning about your nervous system is life changing, in my opinion, because what it does is it shifts you from there is something wrong with me, I'm broken, to wow, my nervous system is really working well to protect me, right? And the beautiful thing about that is you also start to see that you start to recognize that other people also have nervous systems. And so you're then able to kind of recognize when other people start to shift and get dysregulated, and you have more compassion for them as well. Like, this is a human in front of me who is having a hard time. And then you might use some of your ability to co-regulate and make it safer for them. So, looking for safety, like looking for signs of safety, being with safe people, and literally learning about your nervous system. I totally blanked on what my third one was that I just talked about. Um, Man, there's another one that I want to. Oh, practices, nervous system practices. So once you learn about your nervous system and you understand what's happening, is you can have little practices that you do every day. And so I think one of the best ways to start is, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, is to slow down. Can you slow down with yourself? If you've never done that before and it sounds scary, do it for 2 seconds.
Yes.
Just a quick hand on the heart. How am I doing right now? Okay, let me go and move around my house, right? So yeah, just starting to be able to slow down and like attune to yourself. And again, for many of us, myself included, you may need some like extra support when you first start that process. But once you're able to slow down and you're able to just kind of check in with yourself, the next step is to start to do these practices, right? So we did orienting. That is one way that we can start to shift our nervous system, is doing a practice like orienting. Another practice that I do daily, and I'll show everybody watching, is straw breath. And then along with straw breath, I will tap my sternum. And one thing that we haven't talked about yet, but anybody who's seen some of the like nervous system kind of buzzwords or little short videos is going to be familiar with the phrase vagus nerve. And so a lot of these practices are stimulating the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve makes up the majority of our parasympathetic part of our autonomic nervous system. And the parasympathetic part of our nervous system it has often been described as rest and digest. But it is that space where we can feel a sense of safety and connection with others, connection within ourselves, connection to any spiritual resources. So, a lot of the practices that you can do daily are vagus nerve stimulating practices. So, I think that those four steps, right? Those four things to be aware of are like a really good start to being able to make little shifts. And again, to have so much grace, like give yourself so much grace, so much compassion, because this is a journey. It's not an overnight thing. And one thing I want to say about that too is um, there can be so much beautiful growth once we've done these practices and we've had the support that we need. We can look back and notice, like, oh my gosh, 6 months ago, I could not have walked into this space, or I couldn't have gotten into the car. And now
Yeah.
I can at least sit in the car.
Yeah.
right? So you may not notice it. Oftentimes we don't notice like the growth that happens, but then we'll look back and we'll think, 6 months ago, I couldn't have done this.
Yeah. I love that. So tell us how to do straw breathing. Walk us through that practice that you do daily.
Yes. So it's very simple. You can do it anywhere. So for straw breath, you're going to breathe in your nose for a count of 4, and then you'll breathe out of your mouth with your lips pursed as though you were drinking from a straw for a count of 6 to 8. So you want the out breath to be longer than the in breath because we're trying to get ourselves more into that parasympathetic, kind of like the brakes of the autonomic nervous system, whereas sympathetic is the gas. So I'm going to show you what it looks like. And I will do sternum tapping. So feel free to include that if it feels right to you. And as you get familiar with it, you'll start to kind of notice how long you want to breathe out. And, so you're letting your body guide you. Sometimes it's easiest to just start out with, I'm going to do 4 and 6, right? So you don't have to like think
Yeah.
about it um, but yeah, it's become kind of second nature to me. So like for an example, yesterday when I was getting my kids to bed, I tripped on the stairs and I fell. I'm okay, but my nervous system was like really jangled by that.
Yeah.
And so because I've been doing this for years, I sat on the couch and I started to do straw breath. I just was supporting myself through that. One thing I would love to say too is that it's not always calming that we need.
Yes.
Oftentimes, what our nervous system needs is it needs for us to move the excess energy through our system. So I've shared orienting, which is, not a lot of movement. I've shared straw breath. Um, when our nervous system, it feels like it's in danger and we go into either fight or flight, our whole system is mobilizing us to fight for our lives or run for our lives. If you think of that, you can understand how much energy is mobilized in our body. And so, ideally, what you want to do is you want to move that energy out. And so, that can be a practice of shaking, right? And for people who have limited mobility, even shaking your hands or shaking your feet or just having the intention of, I'm doing something to move some of this excess mobilized energy out can be helpful. Um, for a lot of people, putting on their favorite song and just dancing it out, right? And you
Yes.
sing along, and when you sing, you stimulate your vagus nerve too. So, walking is wonderful. Having a daily movement practice that works for where your body's at in this moment can be really helpful. It's kind of like I think of it for me, it's preventative care. My morning walk is kind of preventative care for my mental health.
I love that. And as you're talking, I want to really stress that this is not for just females or males, not for just young or just old. This is not a froofy thing. This is a real life. I can be a witness of how much it has helped me since our wreck to learn about the nervous system and how it works
Mhm.
and then recognize the things that my body is doing, and then either going into a state of more calm and orienting or those types of things, or really moving that stress through me and allowing it to be moved through my system so that it doesn't get stuck. And I will say for our family, I live primarily with boys, and they've learned how much this helps them as well. This
Yeah.
is not just for one type of person or one type of incident. This is really for everybody, regardless of what the situation was that amped your nervous system up in the first place. This is
Yeah.
something that can help you, and I promise that it will help you as you learn more and give it a try. And if you at first need to try by yourself, that's great. And then when you're ready and you have a safe person or community to talk with and be able to connect with other people that understand these things, you will feel a sense of security and safety that will also help regulate your nervous system, like Sarah talked about, because there is going to be some co-regulation that happens, but then also your nervous system is going to recognize, I'm safe. I can
Right.
continue to do this. And then you feel more confident to try it again because it worked, right? And that's something that's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Sarah, before we wrap up, I know you and I could talk about this for probably 8 hours straight
Yes.
without stopping.
Yes.
Is there anything that you really want to leave people with that you haven't said yet? Anything that you would like to close with?
I just really want people to know that feeling better is possible,
Mm,
right? Because I know personally and from talking to others, like when you're in some of the darkest days of your life, it can feel like it will never get better.
mm.
And it can, right? It can. So, like, if you're watching this video, you're clearly moving toward finding ways to feel better. But I just think it's really important to know that you can shift out of it. That is absolutely possible.
I love that. Thank you so much. And in the show notes will be all the information about Sarah if you'd like to find out the resources that she has. She's incredible. I'm so crazy lucky that we have crossed paths and become friends. Sarah, thank you so much for being here today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It was so wonderful to be with you.
All right. With that, we hope your road gets a little bit easier.